Canada has officially teamed up with the European Union to hit back at U.S. steel tariffs, rolling out a massive $20 billion countermeasure. And brace yourself. The potential economic damage facing the U.S. could reach a staggering $2 trillion. Yes, you heard that right. That's the amount experts warn could vanish from the U.S. economy if the current tariff-heavy strategy continues unchecked. In response, the EU is aggressively shifting supply chains and multi-billion-dollar investments away from the U.S., strengthening trade with Canada and rising Asian economies instead. If this continues, the U.S. could face an unprecedented $2 trillion setback, threatening the very foundation of the long-standing U.S.-EU partnership. Trump once claimed the EU had been exploiting the U.S., but now Brussels is showing it can not only survive without Washington, it might actually thrive. So are we witnessing the collapse of a 7-decade alliance, or just a power play meant to force the White House to back off its tariff push? If Trump miscalculates, who will bear the greatest loss in this global trade showdown? Let's break it down. And don't forget, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. As trade tensions spike, the EU has issued a serious warning. It may cancel a $43.2 billion aircraft deal with Boeing. This isn't just about economics. It's a pointed political statement. Europe is pushing back hard against Trump's go-it-alone tariff agenda. Trump's steel war began in 2018 with a 25% duty on EU steel and 10% on aluminum. By 2025, those tariffs are back and broader. European cars, auto parts, and most other imports are now facing heavy new duties. Europe tried to offer a zero-for-zero deal, no tariffs from either side. Washington declined. In the meantime, Europe's key sectors, cars, machinery, wine, were hit hard. In response, the EU slapped a 25% tariff on $23 billion worth of U.S. goods, from corn and wheat to motorcycles and apparel. But it didn't stop there. A $114 billion retaliation package is in the works, focused on high-value sectors like aviation, autos, and tech. The EU is even threatening to replace Boeing with Airbus or China's Comac. Ryanair may cancel its $30 billion order for 330 Boeing 737 MAX jets. CEO Michael O'Leary said he'd consider switching to Comac if prices stay lower. It's not just aviation. U.S. firms like Tesla are feeling the sting too. German Tesla sales are down nearly 60%, with Swedish figures plummeting 81%, partly due to political backlash tied to Elon Musk. These frictions are now cutting into the broader economy. In Q1 2025, U.S. GDP dropped 0.3%, the first decline since 2022. Why? Companies rushed to buy goods before tariffs took effect, causing a massive 41% spike in imports and pushing the trade deficit to a record $140.5 billion. The Fed is warning that chaotic trade policies could lead to higher inflation, slower growth, and job losses. Europe's retaliation against Boeing is just one piece of a larger fight against U.S. protectionism. By April 2025, the EU had imposed an additional $23 billion in tariffs targeting U.S. steel, aluminum, clothing, and bikes. Now, an even larger $113 billion strike is coming, aimed at America's most lucrative sectors. Alongside tariffs, Europe is going the legal route too. The EU has filed a formal complaint with the WTO, saying Trump's trade moves violate Article 21 of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. They argue national security is being misused as an excuse for economic aggression. In a key ruling, the WTO sided with Europe in 2022, stating the U.S. cannot invoke national security to justify blanket tariffs. That ruling gives the EU legal ground to retaliate, and it's using it. To offset damage from U.S. tariffs, EU countries launched aid packages. Spain, for example, rolled out a 14.1 billion euros, $15.66 billion plan to help industries like olive oil and autos. These moves are putting more pressure on the U.S. economy. It's not just Boeing or Tesla. Everyday Americans are feeling the pain. When tariffs increase, U.S. goods cost more overseas, sales drop, factories slow down, and jobs are lost. American agriculture, especially in the Midwest, is reeling. Export markets for corn and soybeans have shrunk, prices are falling, and input costs, like fertilizer, are soaring due to global supply issues. A wave of bankruptcies has hit small farms. U.S. tariffs on European goods also mean higher prices at home. When European parts used in cars or electronics cost more, the final product does too. Simply put, Americans are footing the bill for a trade war they didn't sign up for. According to Eurostat, by 2024, the EU had exported $531.6 billion in goods to the US, while American exports to Europe totaled just $333.40 billion, a gap of nearly $200 billion. Europe is using this imbalance as leverage to hit back harder. In today's world, trade is more than economics. It's a tool of geopolitical power. Every tariff and legal ruling sends shockwaves through markets, and U.S. workers are now feeling them directly. Quietly, the EU has also built up ties with other major partners, especially Canada, aiming to reduce reliance on the American market. One key example is CETA, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement between the EU and Canada. Signed in 2016 and provisionally in effect since 2017, it's now eliminating nearly all tariffs between the two economies. By 2024, nearly all trade barriers under CETA are gone. The result? Smoother trade, more investment, and stronger business links on both sides of the Atlantic. One standout area is clean energy and advanced technology. Under CETA, Canada and the EU are partnering to develop next-gen clean technologies, building a more future-proof, low-carbon economy. One highlight of this partnership was the CETA Clean Technology Summit held in 2022, a major event designed to boost trade, innovation, and investment between Canada and the EU. Both sides are now working together to build stronger, more diverse supply chains, critical in an era defined by climate change and global energy security issues. Defense is another key area of collaboration. The EU and Canada are improving communication and coordination on regional and global security, especially in the Indo-Pacific. This type of joint effort not only improves safety, but also supports a rules-based international system focused on cooperation. Still, CETA isn't without controversy. Within the EU, some member states, especially France, have raised objections. In March 2024, the French Senate voted against ratification, citing potential risks to agriculture and national food security. Even so, CETA remains in provisional effect and continues delivering real economic benefits to both parties. By strengthening ties with Canada, the EU is clearly working to reduce its reliance on the US, a key move as the US doubles down on unilateral tariffs and protectionism. The EU is seeking stable, trustworthy partners to support long-term growth and stability. This shift isn't just affecting companies like Boeing, it's influencing the broader U.S. economy as GDP growth continues to show signs of slowing. CDA is more than just a trade pact. It's part of the EU's wider strategy to boost economic and geopolitical influence during a time of rapid global change. Together with Canada, the EU is expanding into new markets and using trade as a form of green diplomacy, all while reducing its dependence on American power. A central element of this strategy is expanding partnerships through new free trade agreements. The EU is now focusing heavily on the Indo-Pacific, restarting trade talks with Malaysia and strengthening ties with Vietnam through their 2020 free trade deal. The EU is also deepening relations with countries in Africa and the Middle East, including Egypt and Saudi Arabia, to diversify access to raw materials and energy. Alongside market access, it's stepping up exports of clean energy technologies like solar, wind, and hydrogen. Under the REPowerEU initiative, the EU aims to produce and import 20 million tons of renewable hydrogen by 2030. Countries like Spain and Germany are investing heavily, while projects with Egypt and Morocco aim to bring in more green energy. A European Commission report outlines $45 billion in clean energy funding, including $800 million for hydrogen alone. The EU is also pursuing direct deals with countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Saudi Arabia, boosting cooperation on clean tech and sustainable energy. These partnerships aim not just to secure energy, but also to create new opportunities for developing nations. Together, these agreements and projects could represent trillions in clean energy investments over the next decade. It's a sign of the EU's long-term commitment to building a greener, more sustainable economy. While these actions are a response to U.S. tariffs, they also reflect a larger vision, reshaping the global trade and economic system. One bold example, the EU's threat to cancel a $43.2 billion Boeing order, isn't just retaliation. It's part of how Brussels is recalibrating its security and defense approach post-Brexit. The UK's departure left the EU without one of its top military allies, forcing the bloc to rework its internal defense strategy and pursue new alliances. A key step in this realignment is PESCO, launched in 2017 to boost joint defense projects and coordination among EU members. Through shared military tools, technologies, and information, PESCO strengthens the EU's collective security capabilities. Alongside PESCO, the European Defence Fund, EDF, was created to support innovation and research in defence. The EDF helps EU companies reduce reliance on external suppliers and improve strategic independence. But the UK's exit has left a notable gap. As one of Europe's top defence spenders with key defence firms, the UK's absence from PESCO and EDF raises questions about future cooperation. Despite Brexit, the UK remains vital to Europe's security. Both sides agree that maintaining a strong defense relationship is essential. In May 2025, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer attended an EU leaders summit, a sign that ties are thawing. Still, formal defense partnership talks remain complex due to legal and political barriers. Meanwhile, the EU is strengthening links with other non-members like Canada. Ottawa has joined PESCO's Military Mobility Initiative, which simplifies troop and equipment movement across EU borders, highlighting the EU's openness to external defense partners. In summary, the EU's threat to cancel Boeing's multi-billion-dollar order is part of a much larger pivot. It reflects broader efforts to reshape defense and trade relationships following Brexit. This strategic shift presents opportunities for deeper cooperation within Europe, stronger alliances abroad, and a new global role for the EU. But it also introduces challenges, especially maintaining a close bond with the UK. The EU is making it clear it's no longer content to follow Washington's lead. Whether it's canceling US aircraft deals, imposing tariffs, expanding trade across Asia-Pacific, or revamping defense policies, Brussels is building a multipolar system where it sets its own course. But the real challenge is sustaining this momentum. Can the EU balance its economic partnership with the US while maintaining internal political stability? All of this while navigating populism, energy transitions, and growing pressure from China. If you found this analysis insightful and want to stay updated on global politics, economics, and defense strategies, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out.